Good afternoon, everybody. Monday night special, pre-election, today's bike show. This is why we're having it. We talked about it last week during the live broadcast that we're going to do it a night early this week, so hopefully we didn't catch too many people off guard. But I got a special guest with me tonight. Dustin's off playing with some fuzzy animals somewhere or another, but we've got more important things to discuss here tonight. And I got Mr. Eric Cagle here. Congratulations. And Eric, introduce yourself. Tell everybody where you're from, what you kind of do. I'm sure they
And
know.
I'm Eric Cagle. I'm from Tallahassee, Alabama. I'm a full-time crappie fishing guide here in Central Alabama, and I'm in Mississippi for about 3 months out of the year. So that's what I do full time.
Just whacking and stacking crappie. That's the name of Eric's game. I know already.
we catch a few of them every now and then.
Yeah, right. Well, not know whatever it is, everyday thing. Man, first off, congratulations to you and the Joe, the ninja there, for
Oh yeah,
having a really good weekend. Tell us a little bit about it and what happened this weekend, so for everybody I know at home.
man. We went up to Branson, Missouri to fish the Wally Marshall Invitational on Table Rock, and that I had a little history with that lake. That was my third time there, fishing with Wally's group, and just a man. I get excited every time we go there because for the people who hadn't been there, that's one of the prettiest places you'll ever fish. I mean, it's a clear water mountain lake and crystal clear water, on the lake, and then you can go up the arms, and it's a little dirtier. But the lake, there's just mansions up on cliffs everywhere, looking over that lake, and just pretty water. But it's just a beautiful place, man. We enjoy going there. But we went up this week, and we started pre-fishing on Monday, and we had basically 4 days, but 3.5 days to pre-fish. And we fished the tournament Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you had to make the cut. He cut the field in half on Friday, and only the top 8 fished on Saturday on Sunday. Excuse me. So we made the top 8. We were in second place going into day 3, and end up getting lucky and winning it. We had a really good day 3 and had a little more weight than I thought we could catch there, but we caught a really good bag on day 3, and you know luck plays into those tournaments too. I don't care what anybody says. You got to have a little
Man,
luck. And me and Joe were fortunate enough to come on with the win.
yeah, man, definitely congratulations. And I recall that lake as well. And what was your finishes up on that lake? I know you got some. Seems like second one time. Is that right?
Yeah, TC Lloyd and I finished fourth there. The first tournament they ever had there. I think it was 4 years ago. 2 years ago, Scott Williams and I finished second.
Mm-hmm.
Hayden won that tournament. And see, Brad, you just proved my point. Nobody ever remembers the guy that finishes second.
No, I did.
but
No,
uh,
no,
but uh,
I
but
actually
anyway,
did. Dude.
so yeah, I've had a couple of good finishes there. This is just the first time we've been able to pull out a win, so it felt good, man. It felt good to get back in the winner circle.
You know, three top fives and a win on one particular body of water. Seems like to me you got it pretty dialed in. And and I thought about subject lines for tonight and November hot spots for crappie. And I want you to kind of go through the process of how you found those hot spots up there at Table Rock, and what really made you think that this is a spot I need to fish and really concentrate on.
Well, I had some waypoints from 2 years ago and 4 years ago. I still have some waypoints on my graph. I mean, I've got basically the same graphs I've had. If not, then I always transfer my waypoints to the new one. But I had a few spots that marked that still had fish on them from a couple years ago. But uh, Joe and I spent 4 days with that with that hummingbird side scan on, and that's my bread and butter. Always has been. I can see fish on timber. I can see brush piles. I can see everything I need to see on that side scan. And that lake's kind of unique because there's timber and stuff in 60, 70 foot of water there, and every blue moon there'll be some crappie on one of those pieces of timber. But it's kind of frustrating because you may go you know 1,000 yards down a bank or on a flat and find one school of crappie on a tree. You know, they're very spread out there. It's the place that I was fishing on the lake there. I didn't run way up the arms, but the places we were fishing, you know, you may have to run 5 miles to your next spot. So they were very spread out. But as far as how we found them, the side scan, hummingbird side scan is you know how we found all of our fish, whether it be on a brush pile or a standing timber. We scanned for 4 days and marked about 20. I guess we had 20-25 spots to fish, and by
Yeah.
day three, we had narrowed those down to probably 6 or 7 that had the bigger fish on them, and that's what we fished on day 3.
You know, when you think about patterns and different things, different keys when it comes to winning tournaments, and you know, besides even the tournament, just finding fish day in and day out. What was the pattern that you thought these fish were setting up into, or kind of figured out that we're actually in? What was the kind of the pattern that you saw? You know,
I think, and I'm speaking about the blackfish on that lake. You know, I never fished for or even caught a whitefish on that lake. I knew that wasn't my strength,
yeah,
and so I didn't go looking. So when I'm talking about these fish, I'm talking about black crappie, and they got a ton of black nose in there. But I mean, that's basically just a black crappie too. But um, they're very similar to here in Alabama. They're on brush and structure right now. When that water temperature was in the high 60s when we were there.
yeah,
When it gets down in the 50s, 55 or below, some of those fish are gonna move off that brush and start schooling, and they'll school, you know, pretty much all winter until they go spawn.
mm-hmm.
You know that they'll go in those big groups in the spawn, and that's I always said, you know, how do those fish know to go to that one spot? Because you know when you find them spawning, there's a bunch of them there, and I think that's why, because they go in, you know, from those winter schools, those females go in, you know, to spawn together. They go in the school, and I think that's why when you find them, you find so many of them. But um, that, you know, as far as answering the question, I think right now this November pattern, they'll stay on that brush and on those trees over there until the water temperature gets in the mid 50s or below, and then they'll kind of come off and start schooling, and you catch them in open water. You know, they'll start schooling
Yeah.
in open water. So I think that's kind of the pattern, and it's the same here in Alabama.
I guess you know, I started noticing these fish here started getting off brush and structure a good bit here. And when our water hit around 65 about a week and a half ago, now it's jetted back up to 70, and I've seen them right back on structure. I mean, they glued right back to it just like it's
Yeah.
overnight. Um, do you see a difference when you're trying to target those black crappie versus white when you go to a lake like this in this time of year?
Yeah, you know, a black crappie. We were all Jerry Hancock and Dylan got. I mean, a bunch of us were sitting there eating the other night and just having this same discussion. Really, I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
and you know, I was telling them, you know, a black crappie is just most of the time a lot more finicky than a whitefish. If a whitefish wants
yeah,
to eat, he's gonna eat. I mean, you can drop a Coke bottle down there, and you know he'll. So a blackfish is a little more timid about you know studying, trying to study the bait before they eat it. So
yeah.
they're a little more finicky. But um, like I said, I didn't even try to catch a whitefish on that lake. I luckily it worked out to where I think Table Rock right now is on a down cycle on whitefish, and I think it's on a really big up cycle on blackfish, because some of the stuff that I hit 2 years ago that had 150s and 160s on it had 2 to 220s on it this year. So you know, I mean, it's just the black those lake cycle. You know it. Your lake cycles.
Mhm.
Um, the, the blackfish in that lake have just got jumbo. I mean, that's the biggest I've ever seen them there.
What
So
was the biggest crappie you caught?
we caught we caught three 250s while we were there, and
Mm,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm pretty sure we've seen some well bigger than that. We
yeah,
just couldn't get them to eat. But there's some, you know, you know, everybody says there's 3 pounders, but I mean honestly, I do think there's some 3 pound black nose in that lake.
mm.
I mean they're as healthy as you'll ever see a blackfish. But and they you know when you catch a big black nose, when you hook them, it feels like you hooked into a cinder block. They're the funnest fish to me to catch because they fight so hard.
Oh yeah. You can almost instantly tell a black crappie versus a white crappie. Hey, I want to talk about that presentation because I'm sure it was very particular. And you said it best. Black crappie are real finicky. I get it. It's sensitive, and any kind of word you want to utilize when it comes to this description. But what was the presentation that you thought that really made those fish bite?
And I thought I've talked about this a lot before, but it's really a speed thing as far as getting that fish to react on the bait. Sometimes, when they really don't want to eat, you can float the jig right, just kind of float it right on them, and sometimes they'll just pop at a reaction bite. Some of them don't want to move a lot, and you'll have to just
Yeah.
float the jig on them. When you have to do that, you have to downsize. I mean, you got to use something really small and really light to float it on them. But some of those fish over there were active, and it was different. We found that our best bite was on cloudy days or rainy days. The last 2 days of the tournament were cloudy and rainy. The first day was sunny, and the bite wasn't as good for us the first day. But
Hmm.
those last 2 days when it was cloudy, man, those fish were just hammering it. I mean, you really didn't have to do anything special on those piles we were hitting on the last 2 days. But the presentation on those blackfish, to me, I watch them every day, so it really depends on how that fish acts to how fast you take it away or how slow you take it away from him, trying to get him to chase it. But it really all depends on the mood the fish are in, as to
Hmm.
how you present the bait to them. I mean, I know that.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense, but I mean that's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah. It's no direct particular thing that you thought that just was the key presentation for that was just going trying different presentations and just
Yeah,
shooting whole stock at them to say,
yeah, I'm a little different. I mean, some people will pull up on a pile and they'll see 10 good fish down there and they'll just sit there and fish for them, and you know my approach is a little different. If I pull up and fish for 3 to 5 minutes and they're not eating, I'm going somewhere else.
yeah,
I don't sit there and beg them to eat. I think you can, instead of educating them, you can come back that afternoon and maybe catch one or two. But if you sit there and bother them, I don't think they eat as well. I just don't think they, I think you educate them when you sit there and they're not eating. So if we pull up and they're not eating, I just leave and go to another hole, and I may come back by there, I may not. But I just, I move pretty quick when they're not eating, and
mhm,
you can tell when you look at those fish enough and see how they react. When you pull up to a pile, you can about tell within the first few minutes if those fish are active or not.
how many different piles did you hit during this tournament as far as that you thought were really key for you?
We had 20 to 25 piles to start with, and I would say we hit every one of them. During the tournament, all 3 days. But on day three, we had it narrowed down. I figured out that the bigger wads of fish, if there was a tree or a brush pile that had a big wad of fish on it, you may catch a big fish out of there, but they were mostly average fish, 150s, 140s. The structure that had the fewer fish on it, it may have 8 to 15 fish. Those were your big fish, and we figured that out, throughout day one and day two, and pretty much had it narrowed down to about 7 holes on day three that we keyed in on. And I just told Joe, I said, I think we need to sell out on these 7 holes and just stay on them. And like I told you earlier, I usually don't sit on a hole. If they're not biting, I go. But those 7 holes, we sat on and try to get a few to bite here and there, and it paid off. I mean, we left the first 2 holes that morning. Within an hour, we had 14 pounds. I mean, so it was one of those days, and you know what I'm talking about. You've
Hmm.
had them. Everybody's had one of those days, and we were just fortunate enough to have it on the right day.
Yeah.
But it
What
was
about
that was
your setup as far as line size and were there some keys to your setup that you thought that it probably helped me out a little bit?
Yeah, I can go ahead and tell you. I said this. Patrick Stone and I were fortunate enough to win Dale Hollow several years ago, and that's a really clear, crystal clear water lake. The water we fished at Table Rock's crystal clear. The the deal where people tell you that they can see high vis line in clear water, it's false. I'll go ahead and throw that out there for all you
Mm-hmm.
guys that don't think so, because Table Rock and Dale Holla and all those lakes were won on 6 pound high vis fluoro. So they can't see that line in clear water. If they can, they wouldn't bite that jig. So that's all I use, man. That's all I've used for the last 6 years. No matter where we're at, if I'm casting, we use K9 6 pound high vis fluoro. It's the best line I've ever used.
Why do you
My
like
rod,
high
go ahead.
vis over clear?
Well, started out, watching my line. I mean, because
Mm-hmm.
when that fish gets close, that's something I do a little different too on blackfish. I don't watch the screen to set my hook. When that fish gets close, I either watch my tip or I watch my line. Most of the time, my line. That's why I like the high vis, because I can see the bite on that line before I ever feel it or before I ever see it on the screen. And I think that was key to catching a lot of those fish, because they weren't biting hard. They just come up and mouth it, and if that line moved whatsoever, we set the hook. And I think a lot of times when people are staring at that screen, they'll never feel a blackfish hit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that light. I mean, I see it every day guiding. And if they're watching that screen, they're probably going to miss that fish, especially here in Alabama. And it turned out to be the same, true on Table Rock. Those fish just do not, they don't eat. They don't, just, it's not the old tick
Mm-hmm.
that everybody's used to. It's just a really light push bite or a really light pressure bite. And, if you're not paying attention, if you got your head in that screen, you're probably not going to feel it. You're probably
Mm-hmm.
not going to see it. So I think that was key to us catching some of those fish that, maybe some of those other guys couldn't catch. Is I was watching instead of watching my rod and line instead of the screen when they got close. So we caught a few that maybe we wouldn't have caught. But the rod, man, of course Dobbins, the EC special, that's my rod. But that 7 footer was with the fast action tip was key this week for those light bites that I just got through talking about. That's all I used was that 7 footer this week, and just any dive or 1,000 series reels. Pretty much what I use when you ask about my equipment, but
Yeah.
basically 7 footer, K9 6 pound high vis fluoro, and any 1,000 series reel. Um, thermocline thermocline tadpole, inch and a half to 2 inch. Every now and then we throw a little bit bigger bait at those fish and see if some of them wanted a bigger bait, some of them wanted a small one. So, we went from a 1.5 to a 2 inch bait, and I don't really think it mattered what color we used, 4 or 5 different
Mm-hmm.
colors. So that's basically what we caught the fish on.
I think, and we're gonna get some questions from some guys out here as well. But another thing in my mind I hadn't heard yet was what was the depth of water that these piles were in? And I mean, I don't need to know 16 or anything like that. But just give me a good range of you know to be looking for when you go to an area like that, a new lake like you went to.
Right now, most of those fish are gonna be in 16 to 25 foot of water. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Points, humps, drop offs. I mean, they're going to be 16 to 25 foot of water usually. Now the fish aren't that deep; they'll be elevated on the structure, um, and even shallower. But we fish 16 to 25 foot of water, and that's where we found most of our fish. There are some fish, there's some really deep timber in Table Rock, and
Yeah.
and some of those fish will suspend on that timber. It may be 60 foot of water, 70 foot of water, but those fish won't be but 10, 12 foot deep. 10, we're basically 10 to 15 foot deep. Now they'll be in 70 foot of water, but they'll be, suspended on those trees up to 10 to 15 foot deep. So, if you're looking for brush piles, I would say 16 to 25 foot of water is what I would say.
Now tomorrow, I know we talked a little bit earlier, but I know you've got a trip tomorrow. But tell us what your plan is for the rest of the week where you're actually going to be guiding.
Well, I'll start back guiding tomorrow morning at 6:30
Mm-hmm.
or 5:30 because the time's changed. I mean, we're going to be fishing brush piles here. We're going. These fish are still on brush. The water's still warm, so they're on brush piles. So we'll hit as many brush piles as long as it takes to catch 60 fish and come on to the house. So that's what we're gonna do.
Probably about 8:30 in the morning.
It may be 8, it may be 10. Who knows? We're gonna go. We're gonna go get them.
Man, that's awesome. And like I said, definitely congratulations to you and Joe. And I know it's well deserved. And, it's never easy. And I would say luck has a certain percentage of that, but also that skill of putting everything together is probably the biggest element that makes you guys that are consistently up there in the top and winning tournaments. And it don't come overnight. I have guys that get in the boat with me all the time. They're like, "Well, how do you get better?" And my simple advice is just time on the water,
Yeah.
listening to you guys like you. And you know, I kind of think back when I first got into live scope myself, and I was a troller. I mean, I still love trolling, but and I thought about how did it get better, and it's listening to different things, and that's why I started casting. Actually, because of you and Tony Shepard, probably are the two guys to blame for me wanting to really cast a crappie. But you know, I want you to give us one good piece of advice. And I know time on the water is the easiest to nail out there, but how to become a better crappie fisherman if you're just getting in this, and you know how frustrating it can be. You're trying to get out there, you're trying to catch fish, and you're wanting to show that this effort's paying off to everybody. But how would you say that in your mind can make somebody a better crappie fisherman?
I think I think you kind of have to go back. If you want to become a better fisherman, and in my opinion, there's two different types of fishermen now. There's a live scope fisherman, and there's an old school fisherman, and then, well, really three, and then you got a kind of a hybrid guy that did both.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, I mean, to really become a better fisherman, uh, you need to go old school fishing. You need to pull up to a bridge and cast out there and feel the bite and catch the fish without looking at a screen. That's how we start every trip I got on. Those guys don't. I don't let them look at the screen. I teach them how to fish and how to cast before we ever start a trip. Anybody watching this has ever been with me will tell you the exact same thing. We do not start looking at that screen. We
Mm-hmm.
start with the basics, and then we work up to them. If we're fishing in brush or something, looking at it. But I think you got to go old school a little bit. You go fish a pier light, or you go fish a bridge, or you shoot a dock, and get better at fishing, and then you kind of build up to looking down at that screen and putting it all together. But
Mm-hmm.
I still believe that to become a better fisherman, you know you need to go out and learn how to fish first before you start staring at screens. And I hope nobody gets mad at me by saying that, because that's just, you asked the question, I just tried to answer it honestly.
Yeah, that's what we expect from Eric Cagle is a straight out, honest answer. And I know you give it to us every time that you've been on here. Well, at least I feel that. You might have blew a little smoke here and there to me, but I believed you.
I'll tell you this, Brad. There's one guy you got to fish with before it's over with, and that's my partner in this tournament. let
Hmm.
me let me tell y'all something. There's never a dull moment with the ninja in the boat, buddy. He
Well,
he he is fun to fish with. If you guys are over Georgia way and want to go on a good guide trip and have a great time, that's the one you need to go with. There's a lot of good Richard Mount, all of them do a good job over there,
yeah.
but the old ninja, man, he's a dang sight now. He's very fun to fish with.
We talk about the fun side of things, and you hit on it there. Tell us when you think besides the winning aspect of this tournament, tell us some of the memories that you think you've captured this past weekend. Some of the funny stuff that happens when you're out there, especially with
Oh
Joe,
man,
because I know that you probably got a bellyache just from laughing. Besides,
oh man. It's in turn, Joe and I talked about this week in tournament fishing. There's so many, especially in a big money tournament like that. There's so many ups and downs because you're nervous and you got nerves going, and any little thing that happens is like, oh God, so there's so many ups and downs throughout a day. Joe, Joe messed up, and I'm gonna get him to tell y'all the story, when you have him on there. But
yeah.
little things like he messed up the coil, he messed up the culling on a couple fish, and I had to go back here and kind of help him straighten it out. And of course, I'm giving him, heck about it. And the marshal's just sitting there, kind of watching us. He ain't saying anything because I'm kind of hot. I done got mad
Yeah.
at him. So the marshal's just sitting there not saying anything. And I get back up front, and of course, me and Joe, start back cutting up, and I look back at the marshal and I said, "Hey, man, what are you laughing at? You're in trouble too. You sat back there and watched him do it and didn't do nothing about it." So
Yeah.
he just looks up there at me and don't say anything. But no, we have a good time now. I play my radio while we're fishing. I mean, we're still fishing, having fun, but it's just a lot more exciting when you got some money on the line and you catch a big one. So we still try to. That's one thing that I'll never do. I'm not going to be so serious about it that I can't have a good time. If that happens, I'll quit altogether.
Mm-hmm. Well, we won't keep you much longer tonight. I know you try to get home. Definitely appreciate you jumping on here tonight and pulling over on the side of the road, man. That says a lot about you and what you're trying to do for the sport of crappie fishing as well. And I've taken a lot of guys that's actually been on the boat with you. I know how good of a fisherman, and I keep telling you one day I'm gonna sneak over there and get in the boat with you.
Well, I've been hearing that for years and years.
I knew it.
I got one more thing I want to say, Brad, before we get off
Mm-hmm.
here. And you know, uh, you're talking about the sport of crappie fishing,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it. I've
Mm-hmm.
been a part of it for a while now myself, and one thing that we all got to do as anglers is we got to cut out the negativity.
Yep. Yep.
I don't care if you like the guy that runs the tournament or if you like the tournament trail, any of them, man. If you don't have anything nice to say, try not to say anything. That goes a long way. If Crappie Masters or Wally Marshall or Crappie USA, they're trying to draw anglers in there to fish, and when they see negativity online or on social media, and it's very easy to criticize somebody or put something negative on social media, when those guys see that, it strays them away from coming to fish tournaments, and that that's what we got to stop. We got to get these guys out fishing again, and bring some of these anglers back, and let's get it fun again. Let's make it fun again to fish tournaments. That's where it's got to go.
Well,
But
I know you had a great time this weekend and a fun event, and congratulations. And like I said, I want to get out there and have some fun out there on some of them black crappie when they school up. That's when I want them. When they
uh,
school up over there with you over in Alabama.
you need to come see me this winter, starting in December, and come on over. I'm gonna put you to work making brush piles over here.
I'd love to do that. One thing that I might actually have to borrow that boat and bring it back to the rest because I know some spots to be really sweet with some of those brush piles as well over here.
Well, you can get it anytime.
All right, brother. Well, be safe. Definitely take care. Have a safe trip back. Congratulations to you and the Ninja. Super proud of you guys. And we'll see Eric Cagle. And I'm sure down the road, he's been on several podcasts. He's just great to have on here. And definitely, like I said, we'll do it again, Eric. Thank you so much.
Brad, thank you. I missed old Dusty, and thank you for what
Yeah.
y'all do, man. We appreciate y'all.
We're going to keep trucking, that's for sure. Just like you. Be careful out there, Eric. But we're going to keep on with today's bites, guys. So stay on there. But tell Eric hi and bye.
Thank y'all, man. See you.
Holla. Man, what a guy. That's all we can say. We've had a great time with Eric, and I wanted to get him back on the road. We're going to keep on here with today's bite and keep it rolling. I know he wants to get home. He's had a really long day on the road, but a couple different things that I wanted to show you guys as well. Keep those questions coming. Keep those today's bite fish reports rolling. I know that we don't have Dust Ash here tonight, but we're going to keep it rolling anyway. For me, I'm going to go in and actually show you some news and tell you different things. And I got some news from Bobby Garland Baits today about the new mayflies that I wanted to share tonight as well. Let me get it on my phone here. But let me see. Sorry about that. Another text message. But, about today's bite fish report, just kind of like Eric said, I've noticed over the last couple of weeks with this water really heating back up. Beforehand, I had fish suspended and floating out, and the long line and bite was just fantastic. And that's the way the fish wanted to be. They were out there suspended and not on brush. and I really targeted those suspended fish. Today was a great example. We'll be went out this morning, super windy, 25, 30-mile-an-hour winds. Had to really concentrate really quickly. I figured out on brush, on stumps on the edge of the river channel. I went back in some creeks and looked around it. Nothing really impressed me at all. So I stayed next to the river channel and focused on structure. And for me today, that was the best bite I could come up with in the situations that we had. Water temperature around 70 degrees when we started out this morning. Didn't really get any higher or anything else. Just the wind picked up a lot. I really focused on structure anywhere from about, I'm going to say 12 foot deep to all the way to 20 foot. And we did stick them today. Anywhere from, 32nd ounce jigs, 16 ounce jigs. But for me, I really couldn't cast to them, couldn't long line to them because they were so focused on structure. And I think it was really due to them, the water heating back up and them really gravitating back to structure. So that's my today's bite fishing report. I know some other guys got them out there, so chime them up there. We'll get it on the screen and talk about them a little bit. Bubba Vance, maybe I just answered your question. Dean, I don't think I can get them to do a popsicle stroller, but tell me what that exact color is. It sounds like it could be, when I think of popsicle, I'm thinking purple and chartreuse, and automatically what comes to me in my mind is Junebug chartreuse. And, and also Keystone Candy, two stroller colors that sound really close to that popsicle that you're describing. Let me get this news for you guys as well. Well, all right. The itty bit mayflies, I know they just come out with those, back in September, but we've got 6 new colors available: Black Knight, Hummingbird, Pecan Cream, which is one of Dust Dash's favorite, Sandfly, and Shimmer Shad, and Smoke Silver. Smoke Silver sounds almost like a double silver rainbow, but it will be 11 colors available this Friday. Those are actually on right now. 11 new colors of the live roamer will be available this Friday. And we did some of the giveaway stuff with it last week. Whenever we come out with them, the live roamers, the Bayou Booger, Black Gum, Blue Ghost, Mug Glow, Hummingbird, all those colors that we talked about back when we had, let me see, when Dustin and I was over at the actually factory and we did the giveaways. All those colors will be available this coming Friday. But I got Billy Boykin here. He's got a good report from us. Catching them in 12 to 26 foot of water, dropping hair jigs, super aggressive, about 1 foot off their head and holding it. Seems to be the most consistent bite for me in the water I'm fishing. White and pink have been my colors. White and pink is just a natural. Let's keep them. Don't have Dustin here to help me out tonight, guys. So I'm going to need some questions. Need some reports for us to talk to. It's a one-man show. So we need to get some questions out there if I can help you guys out with them and keep the show rolling. But we'll probably cut a little bit slower this week just for the simple fact it's, no co-host. Bubba Vance. Fished last week around the piers and fish were 5 to 6 foot deep. Hit mostly purple shades. Plan on fishing again tomorrow, Bubba. Appreciate the report. Actually, where were you from, Bubba? Let's hear it, man. John Breland. Went downriver yesterday, and they were scattered all over the place. Caught 7 smalls and only 2 keepers. John, I'm sure he's talking about the Pearl River itself. For me, I didn't see hardly any fish today suspended, and I really think the only ones that I could get to suspend was after we kind of gave up from them or spooked them off stumps or brush piles. Those fish would then scatter off there and suspend, and I think they actually went back and one of the keys I think for me, and even think about what Eric talked about a few minutes ago, was, uh, you know, not burning down a spot and uh, hitting it and then moving off of it. For me today, I could tell those temperament of the fish. If you didn't catch them off pretty quick and they could hear the boat slap and everything else, they would leave it pretty abruptly. But uh, for me was just trying to cover a lot of stumps and hit those fresh fish as much as I could, especially in the kind of wind that we had today facing us. I ever use hair jigs? Yeah, I actually do occasionally. When the water temperature for me is really cold, I like hair jigs just for the simple fact I got to hold it so still. But also in that same time frame, and we talk about the bobby garland baby shad a lot. But one thing that makes the bobby garland baby shad so special is it being soft plastic. And as water gets colder, plastic gets harder, and having a soft plastic like the baby shad, and this is chartreuse glitter right there, that bait is still able to move even in cold water. So I will use hair jigs occasionally, but a lot of times I'm gonna revert to a bait like the baby shad that still has a lot of natural action to it, even in when the water gets really cold. But when the water gets extremely cold, baby shad or hair jig is kind of my choice. Youngin, have I ever tried the pile driver while longline? I have a little bit. That dual tail bait. Only thing for me, it's a little bit different profile, a little bit bigger profile. It pulls really well, and I just never had a big use of trying another profile when it comes to long line. And I just have so much confidence of the depth range that this bait can go with. And this is the Bobby Garland stroller that I know how deep they go, and I know how the fish react to them. If I was fishing a lake that had a lot of black crappie and I want a long line, the pile driver would be a good choice just because it has that bug and darker tones, solid tone bodies to them. So it's definitely a bait to give it a shot every now and then. Steve Reynolds, lots of rain in Oklahoma the last few days. What will the rising water do to the bite? First thing, Steve, necessarily, I would check exactly where I've been catching them at. I wouldn't stray too far from that area unless you got current involved. And I know I don't, I mention current a lot, and I don't want you guys to ever underestimate what current does to crappie. At least what I've seen over the last couple of years when it comes to, trying to guide and keep on fish. But current is probably the biggest thing that moves fish away from an area. Rising water, I've seen the actual fish stay in the same area unless it's got current. Current changes everything faster than the rising water it does in my mind. Billy, what are your strategies for getting crappie to commit to baits when the clouds are out and they stuck down to the bottom? Seems a lot of larger fish this week have been stuck down to the bottom, sitting really still anytime the light gets covered up. I think it's a lot to do with the water warming up more than anything else, Billy. This water's made them a little bit more lazy, and I kind of think about the whole natural cycle of animals and such. They fed up real heavy about 2 weeks ago. That water was getting cold. They just were really starting to gorge themselves, and all of a sudden the water started heating back up. It's kind of like us if we ate a really big meal and went out in the heat. You want to slow down at that point and kind of get lazy. And I really feel like that's what happened to these fish. And it started happening last week. I'm gonna say around last Monday. I could see the water was really warming up and staying warm, and those fish they've been on a big gorge and they were really full and they really don't want to eat too much. But to me, you look at the new Bobby Garland Mayfly bait, and I think of and the itty bit slab hunters on finicky fish, but offering them a small profile bait, that's something that, like the itty bit mayfly, that they're not really considering a big meal, that a lot of times that you're just wanting to aggravate these fish. And that's kind of what we did today, even is we kind of had to aggravate them and keep the bait right in their face, and to the point either they would hit it or they'd push it out of the way. A lot of times we see these fish today, they would flutter up and flame up, and you can see it on your live sonar where they almost look like they're steaming up and just getting upset almost. And at that point, either they would strike it and eat it, or they would just strike it to move it away from them and sit back down there, almost kind of like they're pouting, kind of like you punched a buddy. Um, so I think changing profiles would help that. And that's kind of what I had to do. I had to downsize to actually get them to go ahead and inhale it. But that's kind of what I think's been going on. Crappie adventures. Florida water temperatures 73 to 78. Fish are scattered in 7 to 13 foot of water, suspended up high early, and then getting in the mud later as the day gets higher. As the sun gets higher, excuse me. Kemp, when you dead stick, do you use plastics or hair jigs? I think I covered that. Do you jig or keep it still? Kemp, for me, I want to keep it still in the same vicinity as that fish is sitting. A lot of times you'll see me, even on some of the other videos, I'll tap it or I'll just shake the rod a little bit, just kind of make a little vibration and just make that jig just kind of jump around. Once that fish realizes it and senses that a bait's above them, and I'm going to try to get them to commit, is when I'm going to do a slow rise up above them. Really the key for me on these finicky fish over the last week, and they've been finicky for about a week now, is a slow, steady, I wouldn't say a retrieve, but a slow, steady movement up away from them. If there's any kind of bobble, any kind of hesitation, it just lets them know that it's not natural, that they're not going to commit to actually striking the bait slow. So a lot of times I'll shake it or tap the pole. Once it gets their attention, I hold it with my right hand, all the way to my forearm, and I'm using a 16-foot B&M Black Diamonds. What I've been using steadily for the last week now is I'm going to just slowly pull it up with my left hand up the line itself as I'm holding that pole. But if you move it with your rod itself, it can be jerky. So if you start just taking the line and actually moving it up, depending on what hand you're using, but your free hand to say, take the line and just slowly move it up with your free hand, you can have a steady retrieve up. But if you ever bobble it, those fish just turn around and leave it. Charles, the bite was extremely tough today for me on Cagle Lake. I ended up catching a few good ones, casting a 132nd electric chicken, bluegill fire, itty bit, slab hunters, also baby shad, black and chartreuse. That sounds kind of like I'm seeing as well, Charles. What's your water temperature? I'd like to see how similar it is to mine. Ours is back around 70, 72 as the days, progresses. Also, guys, the new Crappie Connection hoodies, full sleeve, UPF 50 hooded, very soft material. It's not the sticky, just polyester kind of material. This is the soft touch. They call it the ultra fabric, but it's by far probably the best sun hoodie with our logo on there that we've had before. And we've had some really good ones as well, but these new sun hoodies right here are really nice. To purchase one, you can either email us at crappieconnection@gmail.com and we'll get you set up. I've got them all the way right now from small all the way to 3X, and they're basically $60. And local pickup, I'll meet you guys if you're around the Jackson area. Or if you need it shipped, I'll ship it. I think it costs around $10 to ship it. So $60 plus $10 to ship it, and we'll ship them anywhere you guys need them to go. But I can tell you, it's by far one of the my favorite hoodies now. Just a very soft hoodie. I know a lot of guys, you think, wild black hoodie. And for me, it's all about the glare going on the screen. Kind of like you can see my glasses, this light screen behind me. But you're not noticing this hoodie as much. But when I sit down and I'm looking at a bright sunny day and I'm looking at the live scope screen, and if somebody's wearing a white shirt next to me, a really light color, it makes it extremely hard to see. That's why we went with this duck camo, is just to be able to see your live scope screen better. I got some John Mayo fish. Enid and Sardis been really good fish. I've been in 16 to 20 foot of water, close to river channels, feeding heavy on schools of shad. Cast at a crappie, magnet rue, Tennessee shad, and open water fish. Also trolled 1 ounce Caps and Coleman minnow rigs. Were very productive until the wind got up, and I know it got up today. Mike, West Texas, catching them on rocky points right off the bottom in 8 to 12 foot of water. There, Mr. Gary wrote. Mr. Gary's been on the podcast with us a couple of years ago. Fort Gibson, fish were in 15 to 20 foot of water, received 6 to 7 inches of rain in the last 3 days. Lake rising fast, going to be tough for a few days. Sounds about right. Robbie, fished Enid Lake over the weekend, and you could catch white crappie on the ledge of the river around 18 foot of water. Fish were around 12 foot deep. Also catch the black crappie on brush chops in 15 foot of water. Appreciate that report there, Robbie. Bubba Vance, anyone catching that Ross Barnett under the bridges at 43 or Pillahatchee? Bubba, I was fished near the bridge today. I didn't see a whole lot of crappie. I did, look to the sides of it when I fished through that area. I seen a couple small schools of small crappie around there, but nothing that made me really want to stop fishing quite yet. I think we need some more colder weather to bring them up there. Old shirt, when long lining, how do you plan your turn to the left? All right, I believe. Old shirt, for me, whenever I'm turning the boat, whenever I'm long lining, it's all about a gradual turn. And I think turns can teach you a lot when it comes to pulling jigs. It also teaches you, if you're making a left-hand turn, so that's making your jigs on the right speed up and get higher in the water column. But also on the left side of the boat, if you turn on the left, it's going to make those jigs slow down and go a little bit deeper. So if you're still trying to pattern the fish, a turn can show you a lot on what you need to be doing as well. So look at your turns, make gradual sweeping turns, but once you kind of dial them in, and especially if you're wanting to stay on a straight line, a lot of times I'll just reel them up, cast them right back out. If I feel I'm on the right pattern and everything else, you'll see me reel them up and cast them right back out. That's just, high vis line is a key when it comes to long lining. So you can actually watch those lines as they get close to each other. You can get out of the turn. The better your spread is on your pole separation, the easier and tighter turns you can be. So I try to have about a 4 foot pole separation in between the lengths. So I'm talking like 8 foot, 12 foot, 16 and 20 is what I've been long lining with here lately. But that gives me 4 foot of pole separation, line separation in between the baits, which allows me to do tighter turns as well. Right now we're at 180 not votes, 180 likes. Thumbs up. Hit that like button. See if we can get it to 200 like we do every week. I need 20 more guys to hit that button for me and get us on up to that 200 mark. We're getting really close. John Breland's tip is looking for some eddies. Oh, here's a good question. Danny, does clear color jigs work well in clear water? Danny, of course, they're definitely going to work good for clear water. But also, I noticed for me last winter that I used some clear jigs, or I don't think I got any right here, but I used a lot of clear jigs when it got really cold as well. So they can work in dingy water, but also work well in clear water as well. So, yes. George fished Telco Lake in Tennessee, had to change colors 13 times to find the best color. Bobby Garland live minnow was a bait of choice. 65 water temp and all came off structure. They love the BG, that live minnow color as well. And he's talking about it's kind of a gray with a shimmer to it. And it's been a real good color for me as well. Got another fish report. Guys, appreciate that. 202 likes on the live streams right now. I know you guys have helped me out. Thank you very much. Keith, Saturday report, Wister Lake, Oklahoma. Lake super low, fish lake and one river. Seen tons of fish roaming in on structure. 12 to 20 foot of water. Fish was extremely finicky. Tried a 30-second up to a quarter ounce in hair and plastics with and without minnows. Only had a few keepers. Not sure why bite was so slow and inactive. I would be willing to bet it's probably because of water temperature probably raised. That's kind of been my mind. Charles, what makes crappie sit down in the mud? Have caught some with mud on their fins. Yeah, Mr. Charles, you'll catch a lot more this wintertime with them in the mud. Wintertime seems to me that for our lake anyway, those fish will get down on the bottom quite a bit. I've seen them on the bottom as well today. You know, who's to say the definitely answer why they're down in the mud? As these fish kind of come off structure and they start suspending more and more of them will be seen in those mud lines as well. But sometimes, and I saw it last year as well, they'll be feeding right along the bottom, and those fish along the bottom could be actually the most active fish that you come across. So I wouldn't overlook them just because they're down on the bottom like that. A lot of times you'll just see a little hump, and it appears to be just like a boulder or something else. But if you bring a bait right over to them and tap your pole, shake it, and just get their attention, a lot of times those can be the most actively feeding fish. So it's something that, I don't know why, but it's something that I definitely want to keep in my thought process whenever I'm fishing out there. Billy, circling back. Question about fish on the bottom and considering all your thought process on what to make them react. Do you think drop shot rigging an itty bit to hold it in on that low strike zone would be a good strategy to keep the casting rod on the front of the boat? I think the long pole, when it comes to these inactive fish, is going to outshine a casting rod just because you can keep it in that strike zone longer. And going back to it as well is I'm wanting to almost aggravate these fish when they're not really actively feeding and it comes to this long pole. And from shaking the bait to tapping the pole, just drawing their attention until almost they're like, I'm sick of this little bait being in front of my face and I'm going to just get it out of my way. Even today, I've seen some of the fish that wouldn't strike at it or wouldn't eat it. They would just sit there and flare at it, and they're just warning it. And eventually, they're going to hit it at that point or they're going to leave it. But a long pole, whenever they get this just funky mood, is just to keep that bait in that strike zone longer. Let them warn it, let them shake, let them either strike at it or eat it. And if he sees a bait and still doesn't react, I'm going to try to aggravate it, especially if it's a bigger fish to say, until either he makes a motion for it or he eats it. So hopefully that kind of dials into that question a little bit better for you, Billy. Flies is snacks and fire. Yep, Stuart, he's fished the res this past Saturday late morning and saw many in deep brush and 15 foot of water. Yep, I would agree with that. Donnie, appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you very much for joining in tonight. Jerry, welcome. Glad you made it, man. Better late than never. I agree. Chris, do you like to use underspins for crappie? Yes, I use a lot of underspins for when it comes to crappie fishing. And actually, let me see if I got a head turner up here for you boys. I know a lot of you guys have seen them and bought them. But the head turner is a jig head I just designed, and it's kind of like an underspin, but it's got two blades off the side of it. And it's just to draw attention to these fish. Now, real finicky fish, it might not do the trick for you, but it's one of those things that if I cast it out there 2 or 3 times a day and I don't get a reaction, I'll move off of it. But there's going to be days that you'll cast it out there and that bladed jig is actually the key of catching a few more fish. A lot of times in the summertime, I use a bladed jig, the head turner, whenever I would go up to a pile and make a couple casts and they wouldn't react, I would come back and actually cast to them, the head turner, to kind of wake up the pile, to get their attention, to get everything going. So I do use a lot of underspins, especially when pulling, but also casting as well a lot. I don't use really bladed jigs whenever I'm dead sticking or long poling or however you want to call it. Dean, talking about finicky blackfish in southeast Georgia in tidewater. These they were tight on submerged timber, just not willing. Wasn't even eat a minute. I believe that, Dean. I've seen especially black crappie, man. You guys that fish black crappie day in and day out, man, I got a deep respect for you because those are the most challenging fish in my mind too. I love catching them. I love the challenge of them, but they can very much be a big pain to catch as well. But if you haven't checked out the new Itty Bits black crappie killer, key that up with a 148 or a 164th Itty Bit jig head. Just try that very small profile bait on them, and definitely would be a key for me. The whole minnow thing, very rarely I have minnows in my boat. I just believe we've gotten so advanced with baits nowadays that you can get away without using minnows a lot of times. Mike, ever tried a bait caster on the long pole? Mike, actually on all my long poles, I have mini bait casters on them. That's what I like using on my long poles. The ones that I have on right now are the Bass Pro Shops Crappie Max, and they were designed for a crappie fisherman, a bait caster, and they seem like they were around $40. I bought quite a few a couple of years ago, so I still got some left, but that's actually what I use on my long poles. Charles said the water temp on Cato Lake was 70, 72. Next week, guys, we'll be back on a regular scheduled night on Tuesday night. Like I said, Dust Ash is out there chasing some furry critters around, but he should be back next week with us as well. But we'll be back on Tuesday nights next week. And definitely appreciate you guys bearing with me tonight. Like I said, glad I got Eric on here. Eric's been on many podcasts. I don't even know how many now, like probably about 4 or 5. So if you like listening to what Eric said, the guy knows what he's talking about. He's proven it in the tournament world and also in the guide fishing. He's just a stick over there, to say the least, over there in Alabama. So Central Alabama guys, if you want a good lesson on how to catch some of those black crappie, I would look up Eric Cagle. He's definitely in the top tier of things catching black crappie. I'm gonna try to get a few more fish reports, because especially you guys that took the time to write them out. Thank you very much, guys. If you're watching later on, hit that thumbs up, hit us some comments, keep them coming out in here every week. We got 230 likes tonight. Very good job from you guys. Appreciate everybody coming back, liking the post, sharing different things. Got some more good podcasts coming out this month. Next week, I kind of tell you, hopefully I get this podcast recorded that I've got in mind with some of the things that they're doing in Arkansas when it comes to crappie fishing. Brian Gibson, fishing tidewater on the river in South Mississippi, caught some good quality fish this past weekend. Fish were tight to structure and 15 foot of water. They were also hanging around docks that were in the same depth. Water temperature 72 to 75. Best bite was a 1/32 ounce clear or monkey milk 1.5 bait. If the water was moving, you could catch fish. Once it stopped fishing, the bite stopped. All right, hey, youngin, a good cast for distance when it comes to using a 1/8. And I get this question a lot, and I know he's referring to exactly. Whenever I'm long line trolling, how far out do I cast the jigs? And there's a range of depth that I have in my mind that I'm wanting to accomplish. Casting 2 1/8s, I'm looking for around 60 to 80 foot. Do I think it's absolutely necessary to have every cast the same distance? No, I don't. Now, if I start seeing a pole that's hotter than the others, I'll start really paying attention how far that cast was out and trying to mimic it even more. But I would say my range is about 60 to 80 foot out. And the reason behind my thought is I want some variations in the depth as they're being trolled. One of the things that we've seen with live scope through the last couple of years is, there's typically a range of water that fish are in. So as long as I feel like I'm in that range of where the fish are in, I feel like I'm doing good. But typically it's gonna be about 60 to 80 foot out. Dust Ash, don't come on here at 9 minutes to go. Come on. Marty, what time of year do you like to use a mayfly style jig? One, and I'm gonna pay attention to my surroundings. If I go to a boat ramp and are fishing around any kind of structure, from it being a bridge or a dock or trees, and I see mayflies all in the cobwebs, or I see them flying around on the water surface, I'm definitely going to put a mayfly jig on to give it a shot. Also, whenever I'm really targeting black crappie that are hard on structure, another key factor for me is that it seems like in the summer months, you'll see fish that have bloody upper lips. And I believe that's from whenever they're actually hitting the stumps and hitting brush to knock the larvae off that wood structure. So that's some of the things that I'm gonna do. Billy, no, man, she's gonna outcatch you every time, and if she don't, something's wrong. Ooh, Chadwick Peters, favorite fall color, big or small? Whew, man, Chadwick, that's a difficult one. I give you a couple. And this past fall, when I'm long lining, these are my two favorite colors so far: double silver rainbow and Junebug chartreuse long lining. Those are available on lurenet.com. Also, same thing, but this is more of a purple chartreuse, and that's called June bug chartreuse in the strollers. Um, the Edie bits, the live minnow has just been fantastic. Mud dauber is probably a close second. And let me see. Monkey milk. Can't go wrong with monkey milk. Check out everything you need, guys, on lurenet.com. Use your discount code Crappie Connection 15. Get you 15% off. Got to get off here. 8:06. Been a long one. Been a long day. Had fun. Guys, we'll see you next week. Appreciate everybody joining in. Till next week, you got Rat Chapel here. Holla.